Hey folks, Rick Mackey. I'm back for our first real session on the mind, body, and spirit life coaching. So I wanted to make sure that the sound, first of all, is working well, and looks like I have that all figured out from last week. Last week was a nightmare trying to figure all that stuff out. It always is kind of in the beginning when you're getting everything reset up. It's been a year since I had my whole studio set up, and I do everything myself, so I think I do a pretty good job for handling all that on my own. So, but anyway, today's topic of discussion, I want to just get right into it and sort of get the jamming going here, but I wanted to also mention that in the posts for this video right there on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you are, streaming to multiple platforms at one time, hopefully eventually TikTok. But right now, if you click on, if you want to be part of the show, you want to be part of the discussion, there's a link right at the top of the post that you can click that will bring you into the waiting room, and I'll see you over there on the left-hand side waiting, and I'll bring you in. You don't have to be on video. You can be on just audio or however you feel comfortable. And if you just want to type something out in the chat there, just make sure that if you're on Facebook that you click that other link in the post. There's a post in there that shows you the link that you need to click, so that when you click that, it actually passes through your identification. So in other words, you can be anonymous if you'd like, that's fine, but it's easier for me to interact with you if you actually press that link that allows your name to show up in the chat. So that all comes to a central chat bot, or whatever you want to call it, chat area, where I can sort of monitor everything that's coming in on the live. So, yeah, so today's topic, which seems to be something that people are trying to figure out there, which is this discussion about relationships and how trauma is contributing quite immensely to the breakdown of so many relationships, and the speed in which relationships break down these days is so fast, so quick. So I wanted to go over that. I'd like to also discuss what the role that technology plays in this idea or this mentality of a throwaway society, as well as the shallowness of most relationships, it seems these days, that people are just working on a very surface-oriented level and not really willing or able to dig into the deeper issues. So, also like to discuss dating sites, where I personally, like, a lot of this is my own personal stuff, so the way that I've experienced it. So again, anything that I say on the show is not to replace your psychological counseling or anything like that. This is just my own personal experience. I've been doing life coaching for the last 3 years, and I've really been helping a lot of people kind of see things a little bit differently and maybe change some of the ways they look at things. And it seems to be having success for people out there. Even if success means you're not staying in bad relationships, right? Success isn't all about, hey, I'm in a great relationship and everything's going well. And, it's more about, are you navigating life happily? And are you not necessarily settling for something that's not healthy for you, as we might have done in the past? So, yeah, dating sites seem to be the bottom of the barrel these days. They're rampant with narcissism and cheaters and deceivers. And, I think I've heard a good thing about dating sites in a very, very long time. So, anyway, so let's start with the topic of trauma, right? So we think about trauma, unresolved trauma, people who are just not able to look at their past objectively. They choose the path of victimization, meaning not that people aren't victimized in this world. Yes, we all have things that have happened to us where we felt the victim. Some things way more extreme than others. But ultimately, it comes down to the ability of being able to learn how to forgive our perpetrators and the things that have happened in the past, and or learning how to resolve that pain within us, Now, that could stem all the way back to your childhood. It could be something more recent. There are people who go most of their lives, they grew up great, and have any problems, get into an abusive relationship, and they're experiencing something they're not even able to process because it's just never been part of their world, But that the importance of learning how to resolve your inner pain is so important. It's so unbelievably important. And you have to get to a point of forgiveness. No matter what the situation, no matter how bad it was, you have to get to a point of forgiveness. And, people say, well, how can you forgive or just accept what someone has done? Forgiving doesn't mean you accept what was done. That's not what I'm saying. Forgiving is more for the person who was victimized than it is for the person who, it takes looking deeper at life and its purpose, right? And this is a hard pill to swallow, but I honestly believe through all the different things I've researched spiritually, and I'm going to bring a lot of the spiritual aspect into my coaching, because I believe that's going to go beyond any particular religion. Okay, I'm not here to preach any particular religion, but I am here to preach is that I honestly think every single person needs to have a strong base spiritual connection with a higher power, whatever that is, whatever that means to you. We all need to get to that point where we have some kind of faith in something bigger than us. Now, if you've looked at my website, GetEsoteric.com, if you looked at any of my personal stories, you'll know that there are some amazing things that happen in this life, miracles, things that are inexplainable. My remembrance of before I was born and choosing to come here for some purpose, which some people will believe, some people won't. I don't really care, honestly. I'm not the only one with that experience. I'm not the only one who claims to have that remembrance. So that's something that's always stuck with me, that no matter what I go through, I always think about, well, I was called in for some reason. I was asked to, if I would want to participate in something. I'm not allowed to remember everything, but I know that we're here. We have a purpose. Every single one of us plays a role in the school called Earth, and I think it's a school. I think it's a place where we all come to learn some hard decisions, some hard lessons. And trauma, abuse, all those things, it's not that we accept it, it's that we don't allow it to perpetually victimize us. In other words, you can choose how you want to live your life after those things are over and you've changed your environment or however you've gotten out of the situation. And if you haven't gotten to that point, there are ways and resources you should seek out to do that, and we can maybe have a show on that someday. But the point being, you have to get to a point of forgiveness and understanding that life is deeper than what you see on the surface. And the people who are perpetrating these evil things in the world, these really bad things like abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, they're humans, and we have to look at it that way and say, what must have happened to that person to make them do what they do? Not that you condone it, not that you don't want justice. Absolutely would want justice. You want them to go to jail and pay for the things that they've done if it's that extreme. If leaving that person is enough for whatever it is they did that was wrong, that's good. That's what you have to do. But in the end, if you don't forgive and you let that pain fester in your heart, that's going to affect every relationship you have from that point on. It's never going to end. It's never going to end if you keep that inside and you let that be your trigger. That's your mode of operation, is living in survival mode, right? You're always on the defensive. You're always sort of living with your walls up and never ever letting your guard down. We're all guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. And it is scary sometimes, when you're dealing with the world the way that it is, like I described it, where you have this sort of grass is greener syndrome. And, two things look like grass is greener. One is that you're selfish, right? And you just want to have, what's the next best thing, or whatever you think is the next best thing. And not thinking more deeply about the connections you could have with people. And that's the selfish side of it. And then the other side is something that looks like the grass is greener syndrome, which is just knowing what you want. You figured out exactly what you want. You know what you're looking for. You'd feel better off alone if you can't get what it is you're looking for. Now, if your standards are a little too high, meaning you've got a checklist that if one of those little things is off, it's a no-go. That's not good either. That's the other extreme. You're just sort of putting up a wall, and you're in your scared space. You're not giving things a try. So you look at people who date a lot, for example, right? Now, there's two ways to look at that. You're either promiscuous and you're sleeping around and you're doing these things and it's all for selfish self-gratification, or you're just, doing what we used to do in the old days, where you date and you get to know a person first and you figure out what they're all about. And if sex comes into it or doesn't come into it, that's between you and that individual. But it's like, you have to get to know people. You have to be able to take risks and chances in life. And that's the only way to get past the trauma, is to keep trying. You have to keep trying. You can't just give in to the fear, because then you'll be stuck in that infinite loop for the rest of your life. Let's get some people poking in and out of here on the stream, so just trying to keep an eye on things over here. Trying to figure out if this is even broadcasting properly. Let me double check. Check the Facebook, at least. Kind of go there. Okay, why does it always do that? I don't know. Let's try to click that. There we go. Go over to my GetEsoteric page. Playing there. Okay. Let me just check the sound. I want to make sure that the sound is coming through here. There we go. Playing there. Okay. Let me just check. There we go. Playing there. Okay, yep. Sounds like it's working. All right, double checking the sound, folks, because I've been having problems with that lately. So I want to make sure we don't have that problem this time around. Let's do it on this one. Sounds like it's working, folks, because I've been having problems with that lately. So I want to make sure. All right, we're doing good. All right, everything looks amazing tonight, so I'm really happy about that. All right. Oh, what happened to my chat? Here. There we go. All right, so we're back on topic. All right, so we're just talking about trauma and forgiveness and the importance of dealing with your trauma and learning to forgive and the purpose of life. It's all tied together, right? This idea of we come here for our lessons and we chose to go through certain things. Now, when I say that, I think there are a core set of things that we choose to go through. I don't think we chose to come through everything that we go through in life, because there's a cause and effect relationship in this world too. So, you know, people talk about manifestation and, you know, how you align with certain things, you manifest certain things in your life. But the person next to you is also manifesting, right? So if they decide to manifest a baseball bat up against your butt, then, you know, that's not going to feel so good. So that's when you have to make adjustments, right? And get out of the environment, the abusive environment. So yeah, it's like a constant awareness of your purpose in this life, like kind of that intrinsic knowing of what you think you're supposed to go through or what you think you're supposed to contribute in this life, and going after what you feel passionate about. Those are those I think are the core things that we're meant to follow, is when you listen to your heart. Now people will say, well, what does that mean to listen to your heart? You know, we all have this inner voice or this inner guidance. This mother's intuition is one that people use, but you know, mothers aren't the only ones that have intuition. Now, they probably have a lot more intuition about their children because they're so closely integrated with their kids, because that's the way people are born, right? They're born in the womb, fully integrated with the mother. And we tend to forget that. And there's a special energetic tie between the mother and the child. And if we want to get into that part of the conversation about the breakdown of society, I believe there's more trauma in the world because there's more breakage of the nuclear family, right? So there's kind of like a relationship there, cause and effect relationship, if you will. The effect being the trauma, and the cause being, you know, this movement that we had, you know, this feminism movement that over time has increased. You know, it started women in the workforce. You know, women really need to be raising the kids. Like, there needs to be the mother. If you're going to have children, I honestly believe we're much better off, like the way I was raised, with the mother in the home, taking care of the kids. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world. And it's so necessary for raising good humans, I believe, you know. And it's not the only factor for raising a good human. You have to be a good human yourself, too. And compassion helps with that, you know. Truly wanting to have kids, that's important. Having a core set of values, that's important. You know, that's why even religions will come up with a set of core values, like the 10 Commandments, you know. Certain things you don't do in life in order to have good quality life, you know. And anyway, so the breakdown of the nuclear family, when they started the whole feminist movement and the equal rights movement, all the stuff, I'm not against equal rights at all, but I'm not sure if it was the monetary system that drove the need for that many women to be, young women to be in the workplace. I know that's how it ended up, but where did it start? I don't really have any idea on that, but I know that 34% overall there was participation. In the 1950s, there was only 34% of women that were actually in the workplace. That grew to like 38% in the 1960s, and then like 58% in the 1990s, and it's at 60% plus since 2000. So I'm not sure what the current statistics are on that, but it's over 60, probably 65% now of women in the workforce. Could be even higher than that. But it goes to show the system itself hand in hand with these movements of equal rights and independence. Instead, when I say independence, it's like people they don't really want relationships the way they used to be. They want to be able to say, okay, well, I'll be married for a couple of years, raise the kids, get a divorce, and then I'll be on my own, and I'll have my own career. I'll be able to land on my feet and still be able to take care of everything, which is fine. But I mean, it's necessary in today's day and age because we've set it up that way. Like the monetary system, the cost of living is just getting worse and worse and worse. 2 jobs aren't even enough anymore, right? So that's the way you destroy a free country and the nuclear family, is starting with this idea that you don't have enough, or that you bring in technology and people want more things and they want more space, and the way that they value things, the way that we value things in society is a big part of our problem, right? So we have sports, on the other hand, sports players getting paid millions of dollars. That's great. You're really good at what you do. You get paid good money. But why don't we pay our teachers millions of dollars and then do away with tenure so we can actually fire people who are not good at their job? It's like we have to start looking at the big picture of what it is we're doing and how it's affecting how it's affecting all of us, how it affects society. Sorry about that. How it affects society, how it affects the nuclear family, how it affects your day to day. And wow, I mean, it's just blows my mind when I think about how we let it get this far out of hand. And I mean, I don't know what other people's feelings are on that. I would like to get some comments on the video when it comes to that topic. I mean, are we getting to a point where we don't even get married? We just have like test tube babies and don't even bother to dig deep in the heart and kind of run away every time we're a little bit uncomfortable? There's a difference between being uncomfortable in a relationship and dealing with abuse, right? So something that I've told myself I'm not going to do anymore is deal with abuse, abusive tone, anger. I mean, I'll deal with all of the anger and different things if a person is willing to accept that they have the anger, first of all, apologize for it when it happens, right? It's not a big deal. Just own your own stuff. People don't do that as much anymore. They want to blame it on something else and say, you or this person or that thing or whatever made me angry. No one makes you angry. Now, if someone's continually pushing your buttons and is abusive towards you, you're going to have a reaction. Now, a narcissist will use that kind of thing, right? Throw that in your face because they did make it happen, in a sense that everyone has their breaking point when it comes to abuse. What I'm talking about is a person who holds trauma and is triggered by something they equate in their mind to something that happened in a past abusive situation, right? So they're looking at the situation, they're seeing something that looks or appears like it could go in that direction. Hasn't gone in that direction yet. May never go in that direction. Probably won't go in that direction, especially if you're with a good person. But they end up throwing up the wall, having the traumatic defensive reaction, and totally destroying that relationship in the blink of an eye by saying, I'm out. By saying, I can't do this. And then now you have 2 people that are insecure. Because both people have to be willing to not go there, especially not right away in a relationship. If you're, a couple of years or 6 months down the road, things aren't truly working out, that's one thing. But get over the hump and give things a chance, because a lot of people don't even do that. Okay, so I got a podcast for Codio 7. I can't even know if I said that right, but welcome into the chat. And checking to see if anybody's popping in the waiting room here. They did change the look and feel of the software here, so I'm still a little bit rusty when it comes to... All right, I see where I need to go for that. Never mind. All right, so welcome. Okay, so where was I going? I was talking about these little triggers that people have because of unresolved trauma, right? So they have this set of things that probably have happened to them time and time and time again in their relationships, either because they kept picking the same kind of people and sticking with it, or they knew it wasn't right to stick with it. They put themselves through so much abuse and trauma, you know, they let themselves just be subject to that for so long that now all they have is a triggered mindset. Nothing is fully ever resolved. And then when they find something good, they think it's really hard to tell when someone loves you and they're expressing that love to you. You're always looking for something, right? You're always looking for something that's something that's wrong, something that's just, you know, is this love bombing? Is this that thing that they call the first step in narcissism, right? Well, why not wait it out for a little while and find out, right? You don't have to figure it all out that day. But if you have red flags that tell you, or something like a feeling in your stomach that's just like, there's something not right about it. Like, there's a difference between when a narcissist is love bombing you and when someone truly loves you and someone is just trying to express how they feel about you, okay? If someone tells you they love you and you're not ready for that, it's always going to be too much, you know? It's always going to be too much. That's why I say you have to heal your trauma before you at least try to heal the majority of it, or try to understand it. You don't even have to heal it. You just have to understand it and say, okay, that's my trauma speaking, right? And then you talk openly and you communicate that to the person that you can trust, right? Whether that's, if you're not in the relationship long enough, you don't feel you can trust that, open up to that person quite yet, you open up to a friend and see what they think, you know? Am I just overreacting? Is this, you know, should I give it a chance? Or is this love bombing, right? Love bombing usually accompanies this feeling that they're overdoing it. Like it's sort of fake in a lot of ways, you know? Because you got to look at the whole picture. Like, how do they operate? How do they treat other people, right? If there's one or two little things and it looks like they might not be who they say they are, you know, I hate to say it, you want to write those things down and try to keep track of them, because it could lead to something, you know? It really could lead to something. And we just have to pay attention to that. Like, I'm not paying attention right now. I'm looking at my screen over here. I'm trying to understand how the Twitch stuff comes through, because on Twitch we have people coming in, but it's kind of like, it doesn't tell you that they're here viewing, which is odd. There's definitely one up here. Oh, I see. I got it. Never mind. Sorry for the distractions. Anyway, so you start to look at the patterns of behavior as a whole, not just, you know, whatever phase you're in. If it's every single relationship in the beginning has a little bit more of a time where you're on your best behavior, or you're kind of like trying to impress the other person a lot more, you know. But when you truly love, you're a loving person, I think you're always going to have some level of that. It never tapers off. It's not like an ebb and flow thing. So when you start to experience the ebb and flow part of it, where it's kind of like, yeah, we've been together long enough. You don't need flowers. You don't need me to tell you I love you. You don't need anything kind. It's just like, you should just know I love you, right? It's kind of like, and then their behavior changes along with it, and it becomes more negative, right? Or more neglective of the relationship, Or you notice in the beginning, hey, they used to give me neck rubs when I told them my neck hurt, and then suddenly you don't get any. That's how you know a person's not sincere. They're just playing it along to get what they want. And that means either a quick marriage. A lot of times a narcissist will throw a ring on your finger as fast as possible, right? I think, moving in together too quickly is probably not a great idea on one hand, but on the other hand, it could be a great idea. Because for me, my experience is, I find that you could be with someone who's narcissistic or is a strong actor or a person who can fake true feelings, or even if they're traumatized and they've learned a defensive mechanism, you need to be able to be living close, at least living close. Like, I find that long distance relationships are really not great because a person can put on 100% front. I've done too many of them, and they never work out. They just don't work out. At least they haven't for me. Sometimes they do. Some people do that for a little while, and that's something they like. But eventually, you got to come together. If it's truly a relationship, you got to come together. And when you come together, that's when you figure out who the person is. When you start to live together, you start to figure out how they operate, how they think. And sometimes it's a good bad thing, and sometimes it's just two people doing things totally different, and it's just not going to be a comfortable environment. Like one person could be a freaking hoarder, or just really messy, or whatever it is, and the other person could be really clean, and or they could be like OCD clean, which is also another problem, right? Like, that's crazy. So if there isn't a way to meet somewhere in the middle, then it's not going to work out, most likely. But getting to my point is, people say, well, you should wait till you move in together. I don't know if I agree with that anymore. I think well, the older you get, the less time you have to kind of waste on figuring out, through a dating relationship, what a person's really like in the real world. It's like throwing fish into a fish tank, right? If you have two different fish tanks and the fish are always separate from one another, you're not going to know who's gonna kill each other unless you do some research. But even fish that are not typically combative, every animal has personalities, right? Including fish. They could still attack each other. So you got to get them in the same tank together. I hate to say it. Somehow, whether that's working together. A lot of times, good relationships come from working relationships because they already see the person, how they operate every day. They see a different side of them, And oftentimes, the way a person behaves in the real world, in their business life, usually shines through in their relationships too. So if they're a kind leader or a person who likes to help other people succeed in life, they're probably going to be a good mate, If it's a bossy type person, a tyrannical type person, it's probably not what you want to pick necessarily for a relationship. Now, sometimes a person can put on a front at work and be a total teddy bear at home too, so you just don't know. when it comes to that. That's why eventually you got to come together. You got to kick the tires. And the older I get, the more I realize I got to kick the tires as soon as possible just to see what I'm dealing with. But, because people can be deceiving. They really can. But anyway, so... And then when you get into the relationship, we talked about that grass is greener syndrome thing. And I hate to say it, but if a person is still texting other people like on a regular basis, especially a lot of other men accepting compliments and doing things like that, it's just like, it gets to be like, and it's not about jealousy. It's just about time and attention and the purpose for still needing that attention, right? Like, are you fully committed to this idea of shifting your focus towards a relationship, or are you still stuck in the single and independent mindset where you're extremely independent? You don't really care about this idea of having a relationship, and you just want to be independent. You don't want to live a committed lifestyle with someone. I had this relationship one time where I thought everything was going great, and it was long distance. All these long distance relationships end up weird. All of a sudden, she starts breaking down like, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to go to the clubs anymore." And then she starts asking me, "Would it be okay if I still went to the clubs?" And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, and I might be old-fashioned about this, but and call me stupid, I don't care. But I don't understand why you have to be peacocking in an establishment that's designed for the pickup scene. You know what I mean? Like these clubs, a lot of them, especially off in the desert in Las Vegas and Nevada, or different places, Arizona, that's all they have to do. It's just, that's how they meet people out there in the desert. There's not much else to do out there. So they drink, they get drunk, they go to these places, they grind on each other, they dance, they do all those things. And I'm sorry, but when you're in a relationship, you got to put that stuff aside. I mean, you're done, right? In my opinion. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. Again, maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but I just think that a lot of people don't understand personal boundaries anymore, or establishing or negotiating personal boundaries in a relationship. They see that as a problem. They see, okay, well, if you're going to somehow tell me how to operate in a relationship, or what it is that you desire in a relationship, it's not that a person wants to tell you how to operate. It's like there are boundaries that they're not going to be comfortable with. And if you still need the attention from 100 females or 100 males that are all your, I want to say your group that you are out there playing the single scene with, and I'm not one to ever be a casual person. Now, I don't put anyone down that does that. I really don't. But I think that the ones that do sleep around and they are promiscuous have a harder time with getting to a place where they can accept this idea of being totally committed to somebody else, 100%. That's just been my experience. And I think a lot of people agree with me on that if you have this mindset of loose morals and you can't, oh gosh, how do I say it? It's almost like, especially someone who's extremely attractive, right? And they know they're attractive. and they use that for influence, let's say, whether it's to get a job raise or to use their sexual prowess as a way to get a leg up in the world, so to speak. It's, to me, even if that was in your past, I think I would be a little bit nervous about dating someone like that, because have they ever truly gotten that out of their system? Is it really, do they recognize the downfall of that? The way that good people might, like a person who's normally very committed in a relationship, right, would look at that and be a little bit scared about giving someone like that a chance, right? I've given plenty of people those kind of chances. But it always comes down, every single time, it's come down to this thing where, all right, you give them the chance and they want to go right back to it. They don't want the commitment. They truly don't want it. It's like they still want to live, they want their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to have whatever it is they want to have, their life the way they want to have it, their fun, their partying, and this and that, without any responsibility, no planning, no nothing. And then to be taken care of on top of it, Usually those are the kind of people that just want to be taken care of. They just think the world owes them everything. And that's when sex addiction comes in and all these other things. And usually there's something underlying that. There's something deep rooted in that person. Or there's only two ways. It's either trauma again, right? And I think I talked about this last week. I'm not really sure if I did, but I know I keep bringing this up, that psychology has finally gotten to the point where it understands that there's two types of narcissism out there. There's a type of narcissism that mimics true narcissism, which is a result of mimicking what a narcissist does in order to survive, to cover up their own pain, their own trauma, right? And then there's the people who are just born with narcissistic tendencies that are, they have no emotion about what they do, none whatsoever. They're only trying to cheat and steal their way through life. They just don't understand this idea of being a good person, or how what they do affects other people, how the vibrational frequency that they put out affects the people around them. And the sad part about those personalities is they're very, very good mimickers. They're very good at acting. They're very good at even crying without emotion. Like an actor can, at the drop of a hat in a scene, and sometimes, they're getting into the role and they're feeling the emotion, but sometimes they're not. They're just like, this is the 15th take, and they have to cry on demand. And I honestly think that narcissists are capable of that same kind of acting. They're capable of just mimicking what other people do. Like they mimic this idea. I even had someone tell me one time, what did I say? Oh, I said something like, "Oh, I like the way you kiss me," and she says, "Oh, I just mimic what you do." And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, why would you tell me that? And secondly, that's the weirdest thing ever. Like there's no emotion behind it. You're just mimicking so that you could get something. I don't understand. Like gain some kind of influence over the situation, some kind of control. But anyway, where was I going with that? Grass is greener syndrome. Yeah. So what happens is, if you try to lay down too many boundaries in the relationship, meaning, you're even just trying to negotiate something or to even share how you feel uncomfortable about something, the narcissist will switch to the grass is greener syndrome, or even the traumatized person will just go, this is too much. This is too much to even think about. That I have to work on myself, that there's something about me that I might have to change. So they start setting up their next situation that they can switch to. And, so they're ready to go when it hits the fan, So, but then they might say the same thing for you if you're the one that says, hey, I'm not happy with the fact that I can't establish a boundary with you. I can't even express my feelings with you. I can't share how I feel about certain things. So they might turn that around on you if you say, well, things really aren't working out. It's been 6 months, a year, and I don't see any change in the things that I've asked for, or, so they might turn that around on you and say, well, you're stepping out and you've got the grass is greener syndrome. You must be cheating on me or whatever. And they'll start throwing that stuff back at you. Like, you're just selfish, when the selfishness starts with the lack of negotiation. The selfishness starts with the lack of moral boundaries. It starts with those things that are actually breaking down the relationship. It gets very complicated when you're dealing with a personality like that. And so that's why I try to look for things that just flow, where you're not even thinking about stuff like that. My best relationships, or the longest lasting relationships, were, all my relationships, I've dealt with people with extreme trauma, like things that you can't even talk about on social media. Not, family friendly stuff. But, so I have some really extreme scenarios in learning how to deal with difficult personalities and difficult scenarios like that. But, it gets complicated when you're dealing with either a person who has unresolved trauma or who is totally narcissistic. And it can be really hard to tell one from the other sometimes. It can really be hard to tell. But anyway, that's the difference between the grass is greener syndrome, where someone is just being selfish, and a person who knows what they want and they're not getting it from that relationship. They're just trying to figure out what their next move should be. And so the best thing I think we all need to focus on is, first of all, knowing what it is we want in a relationship, and fixing the relationship we have with ourselves, right? That inner voice that we all have. No, not voices in your head. Everyone says, oh, is it voices in your head? No. Talking about the inner voice, the way that we all kind of like sometimes talk to ourselves when we're frustrated or whatever. You kind of just blurt out a few words, and it's kind of like every word we say, every thought we think, that inner voice, I'll encompass that all as your inner voice. That has such a profound impact on how you feel about yourself. And if you hate yourself, or you feel like you're not measuring up, or that you're not enough, or that you're a victim of this life instead of in total control over what it is you want from life, meaning, none of us are totally in control of everything in our lives, but we have control over our attitudes. That's the one thing that people can't take from us, and our faith, right? Those are the two most important things. But everyone talks about compatibility being important, right? And with compatibility, I think no two people are going to be 100% the same, right? But the majority of the things that are important to you kind of need to line up. That's why one of the first questions people ask is, what's your religion? Or what's your, how much money do you make? Or whatever, all these things. And there's a reason for people asking that, especially the spiritual question, because some people are not negotiable when it comes to their religion, right? I think that as long as, to me personally, as long as a person has a faith in a higher power, I don't care what it is. But we all have to be accepting of each other's differences to an extent, but we both have to be on the same path. So let's say one person's an atheist and the other person is a spiritual person. I don't think that's going to work out long term, especially if both are stubborn on their path. In other words, they're never going to be open to this idea of a God or a higher power. It probably isn't going to work out. So, or if you have a core set of moral values, like, and I hate to say this, but it almost seems like in today's day and age, people are throwing around questions on social media like, if a person cheats, should they be forgiven? And I say to myself, yeah, you can forgive them, but should you trust them again? That's up to the individual. Depends on your core set of moral value, right? What do you? How much of an importance do you place on mistakes like that, right? To me, it's not a mistake. It's a selfish act, right? To cheat on somebody, and I've had situations where I was in long-term relationships with no intimacy for a very long time, many, many, many years. And I could have cheated many, many times. But because of my core values, I decided not to do that, to keep working on things, to try and figure it out, dig into it. And then, I ended up well, it's almost like there's two extremes there, right? So here I am in this multi-year relationship like that and not loving myself enough to know when to end it, right? So that I could find my happiness, even if it meant to be alone. I'd rather be rejected, and I'd rather be alone than being rejected in a relationship. 100%. It's less painful. It's it removes this deep desire to try and resolve something for somebody else. And when I come to find out that in the long run, I was really just trying to heal myself and trying to learn my own self-love. And that's what came from that whole situation. But the point is, going back to the original point, was that you have to have that core set of values already in your repertoire to say, if this scenario happens, the rejection, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to be a cheater? Are you going to try and resolve the problem? Are you eventually going to move on from that and then find a new relationship and do what you need to do? But I'm never ever going to be the kind of person that just takes from life without wanting to give first. To me, that's a strong moral value for me. So those are just examples of moral values, right? Things that you want to have in compatibility, right? Now, do you have to have the same favorite color? No, those are ridiculous things. Who cares about that stuff? Do you have slight differences in the way you clean the house or the way that you cook or the things that you like to eat or whatever? Those things are not what I'm talking about when it comes to compatibility. I'm only talking about the big things that are so important, the things that you can't negotiate with, such as a person who has an anger issue, meaning everything that they do when they're uncomfortable, they deal with it angrily. They deal with it in a hostile way instead of, taking a step back and saying, hey, none of us are perfect. We all have our breaking points when it comes to certain things, but anger should never be directed at the one you love. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for anger to be directed unless it's in self-defense. And if you get to that point, it's time for some counseling, folks. Either get the counseling, figure it out, or move on, because that's no way to live. That's no way to live your life, to live all of your years in this back and forth with the hate, the narcissism, the selfishness. It's like, figure out what it is that your core values are. And if you have to take those to your grave alone, then so be it. But the core things you can't negotiate on. The core things, the core values that you've set up for yourself, you can't negotiate on. Because as soon as you do that, you're the one that suffers. You're the one that goes without all those years. And be compassionate, listen, work hard. But if you're the only one doing it, again, I say it's time to get out. It's time to try something new. Even if it means to be alone. And not everyone has the finances or the ability to do that right away, but everyone has the ability to imagine, to plan, to take steps, to do whatever it takes to get out of the environment you're in. Because if you don't take the wheel and steer it, somebody else will. Somebody else will eventually do that for you. Now, compatibility has nothing to do with this idea of having to be perfect in a relationship, right? So, a lot of people think, okay, well, you just want me to be perfect. You want me to be what you want me to be you, or whatever, right? So they'll start throwing things back in your face. It's like, no, this is about what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with, what I'm willing to accept in a relationship, what I'm not willing to accept in a relationship. And if it hits one of my core values, then it's game over. It's not going to happen. But if it's like, slight differences in how we operate, I'm perfectly willing to work with whatever. But, even if you have trauma and you get angry and all these things over nothing, all I ask is for the apology and ownership of the problem, right? To say, hey, you know what? I know I need to work on that. I'll definitely keep doing that. I apologize, but you have to see progress, and you have to see a strong intention and a desire for change. And too many people will not. First of all, they don't even admit that they have a problem. They don't own their own issues, and they just sit there and take it out on everyone around them. And it's a sad way for them to live. That's where communication comes in, right? This willingness to communicate, to kind of really hear what the other person has to say. That's on both sides. And the one thing I find that I can be a really good listener if what a person is saying is truthful. But as soon as a person gets deceptive or twists the truth of the matter of what's really going on, in other words, everyone says, well, that's my perspective. Differences in perspective are usually minute, or they're very, very small variations on the reality. And you can see a different person's point of view and how something might have affected them from their emotional standpoint. But you have to have a full understanding of your emotional standpoint for that to happen first, right? So, but if a person is being deceptive and manipulative and flat out lying about the reality of what happened and trying to gaslight you into believing that their version of reality is true, then you're not dealing with a normal personality. again, it's something that you have to dig deep on, because if this is a pattern for this person, like they're not remembering, or they're pretending that they don't, not even pretending that they don't remember. They're just saying this is the way it happened, and it's, in your heart of hearts that that wasn't said, or this wasn't said, or and it's like they're unwilling to sort of take a step back and listen to the reality of what, because there's really only one truth when it comes to certain things. There's perspective. Yes, there, like I said, a slight variation on the truth from their perspective through their distortion. But when it becomes polar opposite of reality every single time, that's just pure manipulation. They're trying to paint a picture that doesn't exist. They're trying to create a world for themselves where they're never wrong, that they could never do anything wrong, that every overreaction, every angered response is because of somebody else. It's because of something that's happened to them in the past, and they're justified in their response, and that they will never apologize. There's never going to be an apology with a person like that. So, then it becomes part of your core moral value system, to where you say, this isn't normally something I'm willing in a relationship, a long-term relationship, to deal with, which is anger. Anger, hostility, throwing things, getting violent, not willing to communicate, holding back communication. There's so many things that happen in bad relationships that just tear them apart. And I'm seeing, the more that I go through these things with people, the more I realize just how unhealed a lot of people are. Like, so many people are unwilling to dig into their heart, the matter of what causes them to be the way that they are, right? So I used to watch that show, My 600-Pound Life, for example, right? And the biggest thing that I found, which was odd, well, I guess it's not odd because it is entertainment, right? It's sad to say, but unfortunately, this is what they do. They put them through a grueling diet. They make all these harsh changes for these people without digging into their psychological stuff first. They wait until the very end, just before they get their lap band surgery, putting them through torture, not giving them a reason why to make these changes. They find out in the end, just before their surgery, why they were going through all this gruel, so for the drama aspect of the show, making it entertaining for people, which is sick in my mind, they wait till the very end to give them a psychoanalysis and put them through counseling. 99.9% of the time, they had some kind of sexual abuse as children, and they were trying to protect themselves from ever being touched again. Think about that. Think about how severe of a psychology that is, right? But that happens with so many people in relationships today. They internalize everything. They leave it there festering. They don't learn forgiveness. They don't understand what a higher power is, because their religion has failed them in some way. So they chose the darkness. They chose to give up. They chose hatred, disdain, revenge, instead of love, forgiveness, understanding, clearing, looking at their perpetrators as human beings who were probably perpetrated upon themselves. Letting it go so they can have the rest of their life in peace and love, happiness within themselves, self-love, self-respect. So many people out there left unhealed, just tearing themselves apart because they haven't learned to forgive. They haven't learned to communicate how they feel because they don't take the time. You know, a lot of people will cover their pain with being overly ambitious or through addiction a lot of the time, whether that be drugs, sex, alcohol, whatever it is. They just wash it away, think it's going to go away. There's a lot of people who deny they have personal trauma that choose those things too, but I almost feel like every person who chooses either food addiction, sex, drugs, alcohol has some kind of unresolved trauma that they're dealing with, or some feeling of inadequacy because of society and the way that we look at things sometimes, the way that the injustices of the world, where there's all of these standards that you must live up to. You know, you have to get married, have kids, you know, have a big house, do all these things. And those are all nice things to have. But does everyone fit in the same box? Does everyone want to live their lives the same way? No. It's like the way gay people feel sometimes. You know, they feel like they have to fit into society, so they hide, you know, who they are for a long time. And they eventually have to come out. And it's a big, hard thing to do for some people, you know? And, you know, because of society and the way it's structured and the way that we, you know, as a collective, as a mob, if you will, value certain things, you know? Right or wrong, good or bad, who gets to decide? But there are certain things that are not arguable, like hurting kids or abuse, neglect, those things. Those are core sets or core values that will not have anything to do with. You know, I can't deal with those kind of things in my life. Then the other extreme from this idea of being, I want to say, of being like triggered or fearful and all those things. I'd say the opposite of that would be putting up with too much stuff, being overly compassionate towards a situation that you know is bad or wrong for you. In other words, you find that spark of humanity in a person, and we have to do that anyway. But let's say, you know, you find that spark of humanity, you haven't forgiveness for someone who was victimizing you. Do you then go back to them because you've forgiven them? No. We don't do that. That's not the smart thing to do. So, if you're in a relationship and you switch from being fearful and all those things to trying to take charge of it by getting everybody counseling, doing all these things, and that still doesn't work out, meaning you're still in that pattern of denial, and you want to keep going and going, trying to dig in because you see that spark of God within them. There's that good part of them. There's that good side. But they don't see it within themselves. They don't say, hey, you know, I want to do something about that. If a person can't do it, you know, get to a point where you've led them to the water and now they want to drink themselves, they just want to sit there and dehydrate and rot on the side of the bed of the river, then that's their choice. There's nothing you can do about that. But if you're always trying to feed them, per se, or keep bringing them to the water to drink, and they don't drink, there's nothing you can do. I mean, you have to move on at that point. You definitely try. You put in your effort. You do what you can do. But if any of those things in the relationship are breaking your core values, the big, deep things that you care about, then you shouldn't even get very far with it. It's time to just keep looking, keeping the hope, keeping the faith that the right thing will be out there for you. Okay, so what else can we talk about tonight? Yeah, being overly compassionate in relationships has really been a problem for me. It's been a life robber. Many years of that, but it was mostly due to my own I wasn't totally aware that I had a lack of self-love at the time, because I was so focused on fixing what was wrong with them that I never focused on myself. I never realized that what is the reason I need to try so hard to fix what's within them. It's the fear of judgment of others. If I get another divorce, it's the fear of not having a backup plan if something happens to me financially. Like, it's all these things that we are afraid of in life that rob us of a good portion of our happiness, because we spend so much time trying to fix everything for everybody else. Let's see. So, bottom line is, you're only truly responsible for yourself and your own issues. And we can't really fix everything for everybody else. We try, but, we have to focus here first. All success starts with developing yourself, learning about yourself, learning about what you have inside you. And if you're not in a relationship where both parties are willing to help each other, love each other, and support each other, then you have to have that sort of pact with each other. Like, we can have our blow-ups, we can have our problems with each other, but in the end, at the end of the day, we still love each other, right? If you don't have that feeling, or that you're always going to bed angry, or that things are turning to a hateful level and never resolved, then that's really just not healthy. It's not going to go anywhere. It's sad. So many relationships are like this because of the two things: the narcissism, the abuse, all that kind of stuff, or the trauma. The trauma is such a key thing, because it masquerades as narcissism, and it's so rampant. It really is in our society. And the way you can tell a person who's had a lot of trauma and is not dealing with it well is if you start off early in the relationship and they're already got one foot out the door. Every time something comes up, if it's no matter how little it is or how big it is, usually it's little stuff. They become severely triggered by that little stuff. Then they won't talk about it, and they say they want to leave, like right away. Like, what's that all about, right? That's because they just don't have it within them to even dig into the problem, because they they don't want to be the ones with the problem. They want to put all the blame onto everybody else. Everything that happens to them, every emotion that they have, is because of something somebody else did. Because for so long it was because of something somebody else did. But then they project that onto you, onto every single new relationship. It becomes a pattern for them. And we've all been guilty to some extent, some level of that. Having unresolved traumas that we just are unwilling to. I guess you either learn from your trauma and you learn what you're willing to deal with in a relationship when it comes to trauma or it comes to abuse, and you recognize true abuse because you have a clear head, or you're so traumatized and so unresolved that every little thing is a trigger. Every little thing is a trigger for you. That's something you have to resolve on your own before even getting into a relationship. Because it's just, you're not ever going to be in a place to accept your own responsibility in that relationship for healing what it is you have left unhealed. And that's what happens when, okay, so you're this extremely unhealed person, and we've all been there at times. So when a person triggers you, right? So you react, you overreact, or maybe you even you react in such an extreme way that the other person puts up their wall. So you have your wall up, they put their wall up, and it's this back and forth sparring, kind of. You're sparring back and forth, and that's all you ever have, because both people are not willing to dig into their own traumas. We have to be able to come together and help each other with the things that bother us, not blame each other for them. We have to be able to come together. And that means, talking about what bothers you, what's really behind your reaction. What's the truth of why you act the way you act, or why you react the way you react to different things in a relationship. So, let's see how a person triggers a person. Let's see. What else we got to talk about here? I guess I'll end it on this idea that in order to understand relationships, we have to factor in the extremes of personalities that we're dealing with in this world right now. And people throw around the word narcissist, but the thing of it is when you say narcissist, you're talking about a certain type of manipulative, mentally damaging behavior. It is so egregious and so damaging when you continually subject yourself to gaslighting, abuse, twisting of the facts. You start to question your own sanity when you subject yourself to something like that over and over again. And then you mix in sociopathy and psychopathy, and these are people that exist out there. I've known so many different personalities like this, and I know people who have been married to even psychopaths who have absolutely no feelings whatsoever with what they do. They've even abused that person to extremes beyond human understanding. And we need to know the signs of because there's a lot of crossover. These advanced negative personalities, like antisocial behaviors, bipolar disorder, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, all of these have commonalities amongst them. And a lot of it is crossover in narcissistic traits. So when you study psychology for a while, you kind of start to see that. And you study people. You just study the way that they behave. You kind of, and you even get into some of the psychology behind the different personalities. You kind of see that it's really almost one thing, where there's a shared behavior that you can look out for, and it is narcissism. So when you study the traits of narcissism, it's really very helpful in knowing what you're dealing with and not wasting your time on people who are either extremely unwilling to deal with their traumas because they were victims. They're still really good people, but they're just unwilling to resolve it because they're safer in hiding. They're safer in hiding in their alcohol, sex addiction, TV addiction, whatever it is their addiction happens to be. It's easier for them to do that than it is to actually dig into the root of the problem. But with the other personalities that have the narcissistic traits, like sociopathy and psychopathy, man, it's important to understand what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, in order to survive something like that. Because it can lead to some really bad things if you don't learn some of those traits. So we covered a lot of different things there, and these are some of the conversations that I've been having with people over the last 3 years about trying to understand, and I don't have all the answers, I'm still learning a lot myself, but I've gained a lot of insight into the nuances of relationships and how society has sort of broken down to a point where people have lost their faith. A lot of people have stopped praying. They've stopped believing because of what they see going on in the world. And we can't let whatever it is, the 3% of the people screwing things up in the world, stop us from coming together, loving each other, learning how to heal ourselves so that we don't have to keep playing this game of trauma, dealing with all this pain all the time, right? When you have a stronger faith and you look for a purpose in life, you become of service. You wake up every day with a service-oriented mindset. What can I do to make the world a better place today? Instead of, what can I get from it? Who's going to hurt me next? What is your mental focus? Changing your mental focus, changing the things you say to yourself, changing the words that you say to other people, the way you think about the homeless guy on the corner, or, what is your overall love level, right? Like we were talking about last week with the 103-year-old doctor, Gladys there. She is such an amazing woman, and I can't wait to read that book someday. But the point is, she was talking about how love is really the healer, that the only thing that can heal us is love. And if we can't come together on that level, then we have nothing. I remember watching a video one time of a trial of a murder of, it was a mother, I think, in one video, and it was a father in another video, but essentially the same kind of thing, where it came time to do the sentencing of a person who murdered their own son. And the guy asked if he could stand up and confront the murderer, but not in a negative way. So they allowed him to do that, and he got up, walked over to the young man, because it was just a young man, and said, "My faith has me." What did he say? "My faith teaches me forgiveness, and I forgive you." And he looks him in the eye, and he forgives him. And the emotion in that video is beyond anything you can imagine. It's kind of like you could imagine Jesus on the cross saying, on one hand, "Why have you forsaken me?" As he's going through his suffering. But in the next sentence, he's saying, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." So it's like that level of compassion and understanding for the flaws of humanity, and this idea that we're here to learn from the trauma, to ascend from it, to eventually come together on the level of love. That's what I want to be able to do with my podcast, is to kind of bring people on to have these discussions, to dig deep into the details, to just enjoy some good conversation, which I'll be starting pretty soon, and looking forward to doing that. So, yeah, I think I'm going to end it here for tonight. I'll have some other topics to discuss, but it's going to be kind of like reiterating a lot of the same kind of things a little bit from different angles, different scenarios, different ways of looking at different problems that we find in relationships and in society today that is driving all of this mess. That's sort of creating a consumer-based, disposable society where we throw away things when we're done with them and replace them, instead of, "Oh, can we fix that? Can we spend some time on working on that?" And if working on something in a relationship means you got to fix yourself, then that's what you got to do. But not everyone looks at it that way. But anyway, so that's all I had to say for tonight, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. And I hope you have a great night, and I hope the sound came out great this time. We didn't have too many people popping in. We had a few people popping in and out here tonight, but I'm sure as time goes on, as we get into some deeper conversation, instead of these broad overviews like this, I'll have some more targeted cases to talk about, and hopefully this will become helpful for folks, and looking forward to it. We'll see you next time on Get Esoteric. Night, everyone.